Death stalks Cadia like a silent predator. The sky above our world hangs heavy with warships, their shadows blotting out the stars. Millions march beneath that darkened sky. Soldiers born not for glory, but for survival. Each one hardened by duty. Each one prepared to give everything for the Imperium. The fortress world is braced once more, teeth clenched, against the coming storm. The Cadian Gate has long been the rampart holding back madness. From the churning eye of terror, the tide of chaos has crashed against our defenses again and again. For centuries we have endured, standing firm against abominations that claw at the fabric of reality itself. But now, something feels different. The air tastes of dread, and the enemy gathers not in rage, but in purpose. They come with cold certainty, not fury. This is no ordinary assault. It is the 13th time the Despoiler has risen to lead his legions. 12 times we shattered his advance. 12 times we bled to preserve the light of mankind. But now that light flickers. The warriors who once strode among stars like gods are gone. Their banners faded to memory. The defenders of humanity are scattered, and our faith trembles under the weight of doubt. Whispers spread like disease through the ranks, rumors of entire sectors lost in silence, of brothers turning on brothers. Still we fight. Even as the sky burns and the earth splits beneath us, we take up arms, because we must. Cadia does not yield. We will face the abyss with rifles in hand and defiance in our hearts, no matter how black the night becomes. Across the void, new threats emerge. From the edges of the Belizer and Agrippina systems, ancient space hulks drift toward us, dead titans of a forgotten age. Most appear lifeless, but the risk is too great to ignore. Orders have been issued to intercept and board them. The 231st, 340th, and 401st Naval Interdiction Squadrons are now tasked with the grim duty of exploring these metal tombs, each one a potential coffin of horrors. The commissariat tightens its grip. Oversight increases. Fear spreads, but so does resolve. We cannot afford hesitation. Within these hulks could lurk death in forms we dare not imagine, traps left by the enemy, ancient evils awakened by our presence, or worse, harbingers of the storm to come. Our commanders are warned. There will be no mercy for mistakes. And still, the Despoiler comes. He gathers his champions and his cursed fleets, ready to strike a final blow against the Imperium's heart. Cadia stands in his path, bloodied but unbroken. Whether this will be our last stand or the spark of a new dawn, none can say. But the walls hold. The guns are primed. The brave are ready. The 13th hour nears. And as it arrives, the fate of all mankind balances on a blade's edge. There is no retreat. There is only war. Alarming patterns have emerged across the Belizer and Agrippina sectors. Reports indicate a rise in cultist infiltration within planetary defense ranks, igniting fears of widespread betrayal. The recent unmasking of a traitor embedded in the 34th Belisar PDF Regiment triggered a sweeping purge of local forces. The extent of this corruption is deeper than many realize. When rot sets in, it spreads silently, devouring everything in its path. Supplies have become a prime target. Munitions caches vanish. Fuel reserves dwindle with no clear explanation. These are no accidents. They are calculated strikes meant to choke our armies before the true war begins. To counter this, emergency audits have been enforced. Every barrel, every bolt round is accounted for. Inconvenient or not, discipline now means survival. Beyond the core worlds, an elusive behemoth drifts among the stars. Identified as the Scion of Anguish, this space hulk is cloaked in mystery and dread. Commodore Bales has divided his strike force into 4 rapid response squadrons, combing the fog-shrouded Corellius Nebula for any sign of it. Whispers claim Xenos infest its halls, while darker rumors speak of something far worse, an ancient power steering its course through the void. The hunt has forced us to consult the Ordos for insight. If foul energies linger aboard the Scion, they must be purged before it reaches civilized systems. Our forces cannot afford another breach, not while Bale's command teeters on the edge, nor with the mordant 303rd stretched thin across a dozen burning worlds. Far from safety, near the swirling chaos of the Franrax's dust cloud, our fleet encountered a force meant to break us. A sudden ambush led by a heretic warship, described as a towering fortress of rust and pestilence, threw Imperial vessels into chaos. Typhus, the Herald of Nurgle, is believed to have commanded the assault personally, wielding contagion as his weapon and the warp as his shield. Though many ships were crippled, Admiral Quarren refused to fold. His cunning transformed defeat into escape, his counterstrike carving a narrow path through the blockade. Thanks to his command, dozens of lives were saved, and the bulk of the fleet endured to fight another day. Commendations follow him, though the scars left behind may never fade. Inside High Command, urgency tightens like a noose. Encounters with the Terminus estate and the foul vessel known as the Plague Claw coincide with something far stranger. Space hulks, grotesque amalgamations of derelict vessels fused by chaos, are appearing with greater frequency. They spill from a region feared by even the bravest of voidfarers, the Ocularis, a cosmic maw that belches forth corruption. Adeptus Mechanicus scribes and tech magi alike admit their knowledge fails here. The vessels now emerging defy even the oldest Mechanicus records. These hulks move with purpose, not chance. Their interiors twist with unnatural geometry. Their paths suggest intelligence. Worse still, some appear to carry something alive and hungry. Boarding operations have commenced across multiple sectors. Kill teams from the Ordo Xenos and Ordo Malleus breach their twisted hulls, backed by the fury of elite inquisitorial warbands. 5 Space Marine chapters have joined the hunt, annihilating hulks before they reach the heart of the Imperium. Their reports describe scenes of horror, corridors drenched in blood, creatures that defy reason, and walls that whisper blasphemies. The Adeptus Astartes remain aloof, but their warnings are clear. These are not derelicts. They are plague ships, born of chaos, bent on spreading their corruption. What lies within is not salvageable. It must be destroyed at any cost. Then came the transmission. 12 hours ago, the crew of the Duke Lustiphon was sealed in isolation after a mysterious plague erupted on board. The infection spread swiftly, resistant to all known treatments. The vessel had made contact with the Plague Claw just days before. Now it floats near Belly's Corona, a ghost ship drowning in disease. Quarantine zones have failed. 3 neighboring sectors are already infected. Naval stations report mass casualties. Entire crews are reduced to hollowed-out remnants of what they once were. Even Admiral Quarren's own fleet, so recently victorious, now limps home with skeleton crews, brave souls clinging to their posts as a silent enemy devours them from within. The plague does more than kill, it infects the spirit. On every ravaged world, zealous cults rise from the ashes, preaching that this disease is not an affliction, but divine judgment. Wild-eyed fanatics parade through cities, screaming penance, spreading fear like wildfire. Riots seem inevitable unless swift and decisive force is deployed. Across the void, a new terror stirs. Warpstorm Baphomet expands its reach, tendrils of raw chaos slithering into the Cadian system. Astropaths cry out in torment, plagued by nightmarish visions, omens soaked in blood, whispering of battles yet to come. The air itself feels charged, heavy with something ancient and foul. Disaster struck Hive Teriax when a psychic backlash shattered the Spire's choir chamber, leveling its upper tiers and killing thousands in an instant. The explosion wasn't physical, it was spiritual, a scream through the warp so loud it tore matter apart. The signal is clear, the tides of chaos are rising. Fear spreads like a contagion. Self-styled prophets roam the streets, declaring the end. Some crowds rally behind them, driven mad by despair. Not even the sacred institutions are immune. There are whispers of clergy turning to these doomsayers, abandoning faith for fatalism. Order is fraying at the edges, thread by thread. Paranoia festers in the ranks. In a secured compound, a garrison commander led a violent purge without warning. Senior officers were executed as traitors. No trial, no evidence, only suspicion. If loyalty can unravel so swiftly, then even the heart of our defense may not be safe from the rot. Among the mysteries stirring, ancient pylons, monoliths scattered across key systems, have awakened. Once dormant, they now hum with strange, pulsing energy. Fissures crack their black surfaces, leaking power never seen before. Scholars long believed these structures calmed the warp, but something is disrupting that balance. Reports flood into fleets, wiped out in sudden ambushes. Entire squadrons lost without warning. All remaining ships have been ordered to regroup, but a pattern is emerging. Each attack pushes closer to the Imperium's core. These strikes are not random. They are precise, intentional, calculated. The pylons are changing. Over 1,000 now surge with unstable emissions, and even ruins, once deemed harmless, have sparked to life. Tech priests work around the clock to decipher their signals, but time is slipping through our fingers. If these structures collapse, the very laws of reality could begin to fracture. Every reading grows more dire. The protective veil that once shielded us, the invisible wall separating sanity from madness, is tearing. It flickers now, its strength fading with each passing hour. Our last line of defense is no longer a barrier. It's a whisper, waiting to be silenced. Then came the attacks. What began with a strike on the Deathbringers has become a wave of raids sweeping outward. Enemy forces move swiftly, striking at vulnerable sectors like Scaros and the free territories near Cassandra Spa. They strike without warning, without mercy, with a fury that cannot be contained. The skies over Phenosa Prime turned crimson during the Festival of the Free Maidens, a day meant for peace and prayer. As hymns echoed through the cathedrals, the enemy struck like a blade in the dark. Power grids were shattered, the capital plunged into shadow, and the invaders swept through defenseless streets. Resistance was fierce, but by the time the army responded, only ruins and the dead remained. On Xerxia, a brutal clash unfolded between corrupted insurgents and the Sisters of Battle. The Order of the Wounded Heart met the heretic cult with bolter and flame, crushing them in a righteous storm of fire. Their victory reminded us that even in a galaxy collapsing under chaos, courage still draws blood. The Sisters stood as unshaken sentinels, and their defiance lit a beacon through the void. Elsewhere, fractured cries for help now pour in from a dozen systems, filled with static and fear. Signals from the Ormatep listening stations revealed an ambush, then silence. Strangely, reports claimed the attack was repelled by an unidentified force, leaving behind only shattered decks and the echo of gunfire. Survivors are few, and a full naval investigation is underway. Civil unrest now spreads like a second infection. Riots flare in streets once peaceful, as whispered rumors fuel paranoia. No one is sure where the next blow will land, and every shadow feels like a knife poised to strike. Our vigilance must turn inward now, for betrayal walks among us, wearing familiar faces and speaking trusted oaths. On Lilithar, an insidious threat has emerged. A single zealot, cloaked in golden words, now calls himself the Emperor's true voice. His sermons twist devotion into madness, and entire cities chant his name. Already, nearly half of the stationed army groups have abandoned their posts, seduced by promises wrapped in false holiness. The Ordo Hereticus has declared him a target of utmost priority. His poison spreads fast. Those who deserted have fled across the stars to Yael, Amistil, Albatarn, and Beryl, sowing confusion and collapse in their wake. That one man could unravel such loyalty is a wound we cannot ignore. But even amid this rising heresy, there are signs that faith is fighting back. On the ashes of lost worlds, something stirs, an awakening. Civilians and soldiers alike have begun striking down the false prophet's agents, burning his lies from their homes and hearts. Across the stars, banners rise in defiance, and prayers once whispered now roar in unison. There is strength still, deep in the soul of the Imperium. To harness this flame, Cadian High Command has summoned a vast war council to the hallowed Tyrock fields. There, armies gather under iron skies, banners unfurled, ready to meet the storm. Titans loom in the distance, war engines prepared to carve salvation from ruin. The drums of war thunder once again beneath Cadia's black stars. Tyrock fields remember betrayal. Once, loyal soldiers were cut down by comrades turned traitor, and blood flowed over sacred soil. Yet from that treachery, heroes rose. Among them, Lord Castellan Eurasica I Creed, whose name became a rallying cry in the night. Around him, faith became steel, and steel became vengeance. The enemy waits, hidden and hungry. But so too does the fury of the Imperium. With the light of Cadia behind them and the memory of sacrifice in their hearts, our forces stand ready. What comes next will test every soul, yet one truth remains unshaken. In the face of the abyss, the faithful will not break. They had stood against the void before, gritty, unwavering, forged in 1,000 battles. But time can dull even the sharpest blade, and as the drums of war pounded again, unease crept into the hearts of veterans. The weight of what lay ahead hung heavy, and though they wore their armor well, doubt flickered behind their eyes. The Volscania regiments, scarred by countless campaigns, had earned their rest long ago. But war shows no mercy for the weary. Called back into service, they marched again, not out of duty, but out of fear that if death awaited, it should come in battle, not in the twisted embrace of the warp's nightmares. At Khazar Tyrok, beneath a burning red sky, 9 Volscania regiments disembarked from towering Leviathan transports. Massive command ships loomed above them, while 300-man companies gathered in disciplined formation. Their armored columns, chimeras, and sentinels formed ranks with mechanical precision, a wall of steel and fury. On high platforms, Cadian officers looked down at the solemn display. Soldiers stood motionless, visors down, their faces hidden, an unsettling sight, but no alarms were raised. Then, with a blast of klaxons, banners unfurled from the Leviathans. Blue and gold, yes, but stained with symbols that turned blood cold. Without warning, the Volscani surged forward. Bayonets flashed like lightning, cutting a brutal path through the startled honor guard. The defenders fought back desperately, but were drowned beneath the storm. Multi-lasers swept across the field, and the 840th Regiment was annihilated before reinforcements could arrive. Their valor did not go unnoticed. From across the war front, the traitor Leviathans unleashed a barrage, so violent it cracked the earth. Thunder rolled for miles, and shrapnel ripped into the Cadian engines, disabling their shields before they could charge. The Volscani moved in, war machines bristling with troops. But fate intervened. A low-flying ornithopter bore the colors of the 8th Cadian. Inside it, Lord Castellan Eurysika Creed and his veteran sergeant, Jaren Kell. Sensing the betrayal, Creed gave the command without hesitation, his voice booming through the Vox Castel. The Loyalists braced for war. Leviathans are built to crush infantry, not each other. Once shields are raised, only brutal boarding can turn the tide. As the traitors closed the distance, grappling hooks latched onto hulls, and ramps dropped with a crash. The enemy poured aboard like a flood of fire and steel. Governor Marius Paraska led the defense inside the command Leviathan, rallying every last soldier to hold the deck. But the traitors advanced floor by floor, their mobile armor hunting reinforcements before they could regroup. Chimeras rolled through corridors, and sentinels stalked like predators in the dark. General Cleef, once a decorated hero, now led the treacherous assault. His strategy was precise. Bait the enemy with transports, hammer the flanks, then strike the heart with sentinels and infantry. He advanced into the dust, unaware that his reckoning had already begun. Creed had landed. The 8th Cadian deployed in full, 3 battle lines deep, tank divisions rumbling into position. The banner rose, soldiers roared their battle cries, and Creed dropped to one knee. Feeling the tremor of enemy steps, some whispered it was a gift of the Emperor himself. Advance. Fix bayonets. The order echoed. Thousands of steel blades locked into place, the sound sharp and final. The Volscani charged, but Cadian guns met them with merciless fire. Missiles streaked overhead, autocannons thundered, and lost gun beams turned the air to flame. Cleef's plan crumbled. Within minutes, his assault broke against an unshakable wall of discipline and firepower. The Cadians countered with brutal precision, artillery raining death while Kazakhstan veterans carved through the shattered enemy lines. The traitor sentinels fell like metal giants, and the survivors found no mercy in the dirt. By the time the smoke cleared, the field was silent. Creed stood amidst the wreckage, cloak tattered, his forces victorious. The Volscani had gambled everything, and lost it to the iron will of Cadia. The Volscani charge broke like a wave against a granite wall. Cadian tanks roared, Creed's orders precise and unrelenting. His armored line shattered the enemy with thunderous volleys. Nearly 400 traitor troops and gunners wiped out in moments. As the 7th Company closed in to finish the job, Jer and Kell led the assault, planting their banner through General Cleef's chest atop a burning chimera, ending the betrayal in a blaze of fire and steel. Creed knew the Leviathans were nearly invulnerable when packed together, their shields overlapping like armor scales. But he had anticipated this. He regrouped his forces swiftly, sentinels redeployed to the flank, tanks angled for maximum fire coverage. While his troops stood ready, the battlefield trembled under a new force arriving behind them. 3 Reaver Titans of Legio Ignitum stomped onto the field, their immense forms casting shadows across the ranks. The signal to advance was given. Creed's tank surged ahead, guns blazing. Sentinels moved wide in a flanking sweep. In the center, the Ape Regiment marched in unison, banners snapping, bayonets glinting with purpose. The Volscani responded with a storm of fire. Megaboltas screamed and macro cannons thundered. But the Cadians kept coming, pressing through fire and smoke. Behind them, the Titans unleashed hell, turbo lasers tearing through steel, shattering enemy lines. Traitor infantry broke ranks, panic overtaking them as Cadian armor crushed their last defenses. Chimeras roared in, unloading waves of soldiers who hit the enemy like a tidal surge. One Leviathan was swarmed completely, defenders overrun in brutal close combat. Creed's troops moved with ruthless precision, breaking through to the heart of the Volscani force. The traitors faltered. Out of 9 massive war engines, 2 burned uncontrollably, while boarding actions consumed the decks of 2 more. Then the Titans closed in. With terrifying strength, they tore through the corrupted Leviathans, flipping them like broken toys and blasting exposed decks. Enemy soldiers spilled out, their cries lost in the thunder of heavy weapons. What remained was a desperate, cornered enemy, and the Cadians had no intention of letting them escape. The 8th pushed forward without mercy. Through smoke-choked corridors and ruined battlements, they cut their way to the last of the heretic strongholds. Twisted scenes of corruption lined the path, but the soldiers did not waver. Their fury only grew. Soon, they reached the final boarding ramps of the Exubertor Castellum, their own command Leviathan under siege. Creed and Kell led the charge aboard, blades drawn, their troops storming through the enemy. On the command deck, they found the fallen form of Governor Marius Paraska, his blade red, surrounded by the bodies of those he had slain. He had fought to the end. Creed took up his body, wrapping it in the colors of the regiment with solemn reverence. As more Cadian regiments arrived, the fields of war grew still for a brief moment. Around the fallen governor, a solemn chant rose in honor of the emperor. Creed allowed the moment of unity and faith to rise among his soldiers before delivering a thunderous call. The battle against the traitors was not over, and the fate of the Volscani would be a warning etched into history. The people called for Creed to take command. He refused not once, but 3 times. Yet the mantle of leadership clung to him like a destiny he couldn't shake. In the end, he accepted, not out of ambition, but because he knew the fight demanded it. Reinforcements are already pouring in. Entire regiments mobilize across nearby sectors, moving with a speed I've never witnessed. Rumors whisper of incoming Astartes and naval support from Ciprimundi. The storm is upon us, and though our readiness is uncertain, every soldier throws themselves into the fire with unwavering resolve. Creed wasted no time. He purged the ranks of incompetence and rebuilt the general staff with a steel-hard edge. Some old commanders grumble, but Creed doesn't care. His leadership has reignited a force that nearly broke. After Casa Tyrock, morale was ashes. Now it burns again. Even the most jaded veterans rise with his call. I've spoken with leaders from every major regiment. They stand ready, millions of troops shaped into battle groups, 6 to 9 regiments strong, each backed by supply networks where possible. Cadian structure dominates, but Finrat and Mordent bring their own doctrines. As these armies spread out, command becomes improvisation. Coordination across sectors is chaos, but that's the burden we carry. Raids hammer the edges of our territory, and now it's confirmed. The Night Lords have returned, but so have heroes. Logan Grimner, Azrael, champions of the Emperor walk among us. Their presence alone has rekindled hope even as the shadow grows darker. Then earthward fell. No messages came, only a piercing psychic wail that ripped through the warp, louder than the Astronomicon itself. Every astropath cried out. We don't know what happened, but something monstrous has broken through. This is the invasion we feared. The storm blinds us, but the signs are clear. Amidst the confusion, Creed gathered his command in silence. 160 officers knelt in the bunker. Vox lines went dead. No orders, no data, only prayer. Creed's voice rang out, raw, steady, asking the Emperor for courage and the will to endure what must come. He told us plainly, the cost will be unbearable. To hold the Cadian gate, we must bleed and keep bleeding until nothing remains but victory or death. And still we must hold. As he finished, no one spoke. We rose with the grim understanding that this war ends only one way, when chaos is broken or the Imperium falls into eternal night. After Creed's speech, the fires of resolve burned hot. There was no pause, no breath to catch. Every regiment was ordered into action, preparing for a defense that grew darker by the hour. Reports filtered in, jagged and scattered, painting a dire image. Orthwood had fallen, Ormenteg barely saved, thanks to Admiral Corrin's last-minute strike from the fleet Agrippina. Entire sectors were under siege. Agrippina, Bellis Corona, and Amistil Majores reeled under withering assault. Plague fleets rained pestilence from orbit, blotting out the stars with filth and fire. Communications stuttered. Entire worlds went dark. Still, Creed deployed every reserve he had, reinforcing fronts where hope hadn't yet vanished. He had personally briefed each field commander before the storm. Now they stood alone, tasked with holding the line or dying with it. Closer still, enemy fleets cut through the Cadian system like blades. St. Josephine's hope fell silent. Solar Maratus, once thought secure, now braced for the inevitable. Corrin was recalled to Cadia, but none knew if he'd make it in time. Astropaths cried warnings. Listening stations went quiet. A massive traitor fleet approached. Hundreds of warships, their wakes thick with corruption. Plague hulks drifted in from Sabaccio Diablo, and whispers told of something worse. 2 Blackstone fortresses, nightmare weapons from a darker age, sailing in silence behind the Chaos Armada. On the ground, our forces held, just barely. Orbital defenses collapsed one after another. Dropships pierced the skies of Cadia itself. Corrin's fleet, bleeding from constant strikes, had no choice but to fall back. Reinforcements arrived not from strategy, but sheer bravery. Logan Grimner's company tore through the blockade to join the fight. A brief surge of hope in an ocean of dread. The next blow fell with brutal intent. Nemesis Tesseria, fortress world of the Inquisition, became the enemy's focus. No one knew why. It could only be vengeance or strategic necessity. Chima Lomas was overrun. Nearest fell in hours, not seized for conquest, but to seize control of vital conduit lines. The enemy wasn't conquering. They were carving a path. South of nearest Delta, 17 planetary defense armies, with battle group Neth at their back, stood against an army so vast it blotted out the horizon. They held for a day against impossible odds. General Neitha's final transmission was a vow to fight until no one remained. We believed him. He was more than a leader. He was a brother in arms. After Nereus, the chaos wave surged across the Kensi Gulf. Nothing has been heard from that region since. The silence is damning. Worse still, the enemy fleet moved with impossible precision, crossing astronomical distances in days, something only dark rituals could enable. They struck like ghosts. No warning, no hesitation. What role the Inquisition played in this storm, we may never know. But the enemy wanted them broken, and committed their full fury to doing just that. We intercepted fragments of their comms, coded, vicious, triumphant. Whatever came next, it would come fast. We wait, praying for good news. But in our hearts, we brace for the worst. After several tense days, the front lines finally seemed to steady. The Inquisition's fortress on that frozen, unforgiving world held firm, though I can only imagine the cold wasteland outside crawling with traitors and heretics biding their time. Those who survived the merciless climate would soon face the Inquisition's wrath, no quarter given. But this attack on Nemesis Tesseria was only the beginning. Our orbital defenses lay in ruins, the fleet forced into retreat, as relentless waves of enemies battered the Cadian system without mercy. At first, we managed to push the invaders back on key worlds like Balasar, Macaria, Vigilatum, Xerxia, and Cantrell. Yet, they quickly found our vulnerabilities, overwhelming us with endless swarms of cannon fodder, clearing paths for their elite traitor marines to strike with devastating precision. The first to fall was the prison world of St. Josephine's Hope, where inmates betrayed us, siding with the enemy in desperate hopes of freedom, only to receive eternal damnation instead. These so-called liberators were renegades from a twisted, corrupt chapter of traitor marines, revealed to me during a secret briefing with Creed and an Inquisition agent. No criminal deserved such horrors. As the war dragged on, every Cadian world felt the crushing weight of conflict. Rumors of the atrocities committed on St. Josephine's Hope spread quickly, shaking morale to its core. Creed responded swiftly, rotating out exhausted units and funneling reinforcements to the hardest-hit fronts. Among the newcomers, General Speedle's fearless leadership during a savage battle at Khazar Gallon became a beacon of hope for weary soldiers. But fortune was fleeting. Despite our proud military traditions, the dark powers at work reminded us of their presence. For 2 nights, our astropaths struggled through broken signals and terrifying visions. Yesterday, they appeared pale and haunted, warning of a menace beyond anything we had feared. Ancient, nightmarish creatures materializing from legend. These portents chilled me to the bone. I sought confession 3 times in a single day, hoping for strength. Now, a massive warp storm tears through the outskirts of our system, severing astropathic links and plunging us further into confusion. I pray it passes quickly before our already dire situation worsens. An urgent decree from Inquisitor Lord Iestus Abenica reached High Command, demanding immediate support for Nemesis Tesseria. The order was clear. 22 fully equipped infantry regiments prepared for the brutal cold, 5 armored regiments with standard-issue Lemurus tanks, no local variants tolerated, and 5 artillery regiments, half self-propelled. These forces must be sustained for at least 6 months, with reserves ready to replenish half the troops within a month. The battle for Nemesis Tesseria is a desperate fight for survival, and failure is unthinkable. Coordinating these efforts has become nearly impossible, with warp storms scrambling astropathic communications. Reports from distant sectors are fragmented and distorted by unknown psychic interference. I'm unfamiliar with such dark phenomena, so I must prepare for the worst. An alarming report came from the Scarus sector. Alongside the usual chaos incursions, defenders now face an Orkoid invasion. What began at Mordex Prime might have been dismissed as panic or misinformation if isolated, but similar sightings are spreading throughout the sector. This new threat demands urgent attention. Lord Castellan Roncadia Creed led his elite Cadian unit, now famously known as the Lord Castellan's Own, on a relentless hunt for Volscarni cataphracts who had slipped away from the chaos of Tyrock Fields, attempting to link up with the main invading force. Creed, a warrior who never shies from the front lines, fought fiercely alongside his men. Their battle at Kazovassan on the Visani Moors was brutal and decisive, crushing the traitors without hesitation. Yet as darkness fell, the feared Black Legion appeared, forcing Creed to order a tactical withdrawal across the moors. A true commander knows when to pull back to fight another day. Creed is regrouping now, preparing to strike back with precision and on his own terms. There is a silver lining amid the chaos. Fleets from the Iron Knights and Imperial Fist chapters have made contact, and Creed is coordinating with Great Wolf Logan Grimner of the Space Wars chapter to align Space Marine deployments. Though the Astartes operate independently, Creed supports Grimner as the regional leader. Captain Ekian of the Ultramarines Honor Company has also pledged his support for this growing alliance. Furthermore, the Adeptus Mechanicus Temple at Casa Gallon is sending reinforcements, an ancient force known as the Ordo Reductor, armed with massive siege engines reminiscent of Space Marine dreadnoughts. Their specialty is siege warfare, not defense, but their presence promises a powerful boost. I find myself eager to witness these legendary war machines in action. Journal entry. Morale among the general staff has grown almost dangerously hopeful. After a string of local victories, some senior officers have even suggested issuing a campaign medal to celebrate. Just last night, Lord Colonel Jaffe's Mandatine boldly proposed a toast to inevitable victory during dinner. I was caught off guard by his arrogance. Though I respect faith and once served the Imperium myself, I saw not devotion in that man but pure pride. Before I could respond, Creed entered the room with his color sergeant at his side. Silence fell immediately. Every officer bowed their heads to his piercing gaze, except Jaffe's Mandatine, who defiantly raised his glass once more. Creed nodded sharply, and his retainer smashed the priceless glass on the floor. Then Creed spoke, low and somber, delivering the harsh truth we all needed. He warned that we stood at a critical crossroads. Failure now would erase every hard-won victory of Cadia's legions. Failure meant damnation, the collapse of the Imperium itself. His voice took on the fierce intensity of a preacher, exposing the looming dangers with raw urgency. In that moment, I saw what I had glimpsed after the hell of Tyrock Fields. A man truly chosen, an instrument of salvation against the Despoiler's evil. He named our enemy, Abaddon the Despoiler, and declared this invasion the 13th Black Crusade. The name alone chilled us, recalling the devastation of past crusades. Creed spared me a brief nod, as if excusing me from the weight of his reprimand. We left that room sober but stronger, bound by the truth. Intercepted message. My Lord Cardinal, the brothers of the Blessed Enigma, once peaceful hermits deep in the Trionora wilds, have turned violent, attacking locals with terrifying madness. I urgently request a Suror task force to root out this rogue faction before the Auto Hereticus intervenes, as the consequences would be disastrous. General entry. After gathering reports from countless fronts, I presented my assessment to Lord Castellan and shared it with the field commanders. Our enemy is more than just opposition. They are traitors who have betrayed their sacred vows to the Emperor, committing the unforgivable sin of heresy. These are not mere deserters, but lost souls who have sold themselves to darkness. This makes them exceptionally dangerous, for they have nothing left to protect. Their lives and souls are forfeit, condemned both by us and their new sinister masters. Driven by rage and despair, they strike mercilessly at those they once called comrades. Unlike loyal soldiers who fight with honor, these traitors live only to sow destruction, fueled by hatred and bloodlust alone. The traitor is an unpredictable and perplexing enemy. On the battlefield, he swings wildly between reckless fury and cowardly retreat. One moment he charges headlong into overwhelming fire. The next, he flees like a frightened child. His mind is twisted, ruled by fear, sometimes more afraid of his dark masters than death itself, other times ruled by selfish whims that cause him to abandon even his own allies. His courage only grows when backed by traitor Space Marines, whom he both fears and idolizes. The simplest yet most effective strategy is to cut off their leaders, destroy their commanders, and the traitors crumble, losing their will to fight like brittle bones breaking under pressure. On Lilithur, the situation has devolved into chaos. To crush the heretic known as the Voice of the Emperor, elite forces, including the Legio Ignatum, Death Spectres, and Jaren Dragoons laid siege to the capital. But upon their arrival, much of the local defense and population turned on their rulers, violently overthrowing the governor and his staff in a savage uprising. The siege drags on, and worse news arrived. The new imperial governor was ambushed and killed by traitors wielding crude rockets. Security forces moved swiftly, smashing cults and rebellions, yet the planet remains engulfed in turmoil. Even with a Titan Legion and Space Marines present, Lilithur slips deeper into anarchy. The rebel leaders' poisonous lies spread across the land, fueling division. I pray the world does not fall further, for its loss would be a disaster we cannot bear. Regarding loyalty, native volunteer militias suffered the worst from these betrayals, while off-world settlers held firm, absorbing losses without losing unity. The governor's personal guard remained loyal, but paid with their lives. This must guide future efforts to better integrate native forces with guard units on planets at risk of rebellion. To Cadian High Command, Skilled agitators are fanning the flames of rebellion across the smaller hives of the Agrippina system. Chaos graffiti spreads like a plague, and whole continents threaten to collapse. Every uprising we crush seems to ignite 2 more cults. My master, Inquisitor Ballantyne, was murdered by a cannibal cult disguised as nobility. Without command authority, I urge this. If purges fail and these hives fall, destroy their key transponders and obliterate them from orbit. Plasma warheads may be our only hope against this menace. In recent days, my team has focused on analyzing the traitor legions, savage tactics to better prepare for what lies ahead. A direct order from High Command caused friction when Commander Azrael of the Dark Angels demanded we halt our mission, claiming the traitors' actions concern only their own. Creed dismissed this nonsense given the crisis at hand, and Logan Grimner backed him. Asriel withdrew support, but I ordered the General Staff to follow Creed's commands regardless. I prefer to avoid disputes among these elite forces, but the reality remains. Most of our intel involves the brutal Night Lords Legion. Our analysts see the Night Lords as brutal shock troops, launching savage raids meant to terrify civilians and spread chaos. Luckily, strict quarantine measures have slowed their horrors from spreading. People simply aren't moving enough to carry news. While the Night Lords spread terror openly, the Alpha Legion strikes from the shadows, infiltrating critical supply lines and communication hubs. Intelligence gathered from various sources points to their goal: to disrupt reinforcements and delay any aid from reaching the front lines. We're racing to uncover the full scope of their plans. The entire command is tense with the latest terrifying news. The dreaded planet killer has been spotted. Few remember this monstrous warship, believed lost in some ancient conflict. Its origins remain shrouded in mystery, but whispers from machine cultists claim it was forged in the darkest, most corrupted regions of space. This colossal ship once served as a warlord's flagship, but its deadliest feature is the Armageddon gun, a massive cannon capable of firing a devastating blast that can shatter a planet's crust and rip apart its core, destroying worlds from within. Naval strategists scramble to predict its next target. The planet killer moves slowly and needs time to charge its devastating weapon, but once unleashed, its destruction is absolute. It likely travels with a heavy escort fleet designed to overwhelm and distract our Navy while it readies its terrifying cannon. All naval forces are on high alert, scouring the void for this deadly convoy. Commanders fear it will strike our distant outposts first, aiming to sow panic and chaos. Ironically, panic is already spreading, forcing us to divert precious fleets to defend fringe worlds. But this is a dangerous gamble. Pull back too much and key systems fall. Commit too many forces to defense and vital planets become vulnerable. It's a perilous balance, and part of me hopes the planet killer is just a myth. Today, Naval High Command briefed the General Staff on fleet movements. Battles rage fiercely on worlds like St. Josephine's Hope and Solar Mauritius, but the space war is tipping in our favor. Although the enemy controls orbital zones around many planets, they can't maintain full blockades, allowing our reinforcements to slip through. Our fleets dominate the space lanes between worlds, striking quickly and withdrawing before enemy reserves can respond. The enemy seems reluctant to force open battle, and our Navy's mobility keeps them off balance. Yet, despite our grip on space lanes, the pressure on ground troops remains brutal. The decisive fight will happen on the surface. The Scarus subsector is vital. It's home to rich hive worlds that produce crucial resources, and its fleets and armies rank among our best. Losing this area would be a severe blow, so reinforcements have been sent to strengthen Battlefleet Scarus. Our control here is gradually improving, as enemy attacks are scattered and poorly coordinated. The greatest threat comes from the Sons of Malice, a renegade force believed wiped out years ago, now striking the federal world of Skelas, likely for symbolic reasons. Meanwhile, the Avarmat system's strategic importance has led to additional naval battle groups being dispatched to ensure its defense. The Belli's Corona sector has mostly settled, with the Navy successfully sending vital reinforcements to the beleaguered defenders on Sabaccio Diabolo. The feared plague fleets have lessened their attacks here, but our naval forces remain vigilant, prepared for their possible return. In the Agrippina subsector, The enemy fought fiercely for control of key space lanes. Our navy pushed back hard, reinforcing their hold, but Chaos fleets have intensified strikes on strategic points to support ground offensives in Albertern, Beryl, and Dentaire. With most of our fleet focused on hunting the planet killer, only a few ships can defend these lanes, though overall the balance still favors us. The Cadian subsector remains a turbulent frontline, where fortunes shift with every dawn. Enemy fleets dominate the orbits of several planets, but we retain control of the interstellar lanes, crucial if we are to face the planet killer head-on. Losing these lanes would be catastrophic. Recent intelligence uncovered a covert operation on St. Joseph Main's Hope, where a faction known as the Corrective Rehabilitation Movement was secretly recruiting prisoners to the enemy's cause. Hundreds have been arrested, and the cell is set to be eradicated before it can strike. After a series of crushing defeats on St. Josephine's Hope, Lord Castellan Creed delivered a grim verdict. The world must be destroyed. This decision came during a closed council meeting with leaders from the military, intelligence, and inquisitorial ranks. The Cadian system's fate hangs by a thread. Chaos forces attack relentlessly, and Sola Mauritia suffers heavy losses. St. Josephine's Hope, nearly lost, serves as a key staging area for enemy reinforcements. Retaking it was deemed impossible, so Creed's proposal to annihilate the planet met unanimous approval. The council debated methods. The fastest, the dreaded exterminatus, was ruled out as the necessary warships were weeks away. The weight of deciding how to destroy a world pressed heavily on all present. Grimner confirmed his fleet lacked the firepower for a direct strike, and no nearby allies could help. The Navy suggested bombarding the planet to destabilize its tectonics, but the enemy blockade was too strong to let ships get close. This failure forced a riskier plan. An Adeptus Mechanicus expert proposed triggering a meltdown by overloading the power grid of the main prison complex. This would fracture the planet from within, but required a skilled team to infiltrate the heavily guarded prison and manually trigger the overload. Assembling such a team seemed impossible, until the Inquisition acted swiftly, creating Strike Force Herald. This strange yet deadly unit combined elite Marines from various chapters, guardsmen from different regiments, tech priests, occultist assassin, and 2 inquisitors. Deployed within hours, an evacuation order for friendly forces was scheduled 24 hours before the strike. Strike Force Herald landed as planned, and the evacuation began under fierce resistance. Soldiers fought to the last breath, buying precious time for comrades to escape. At precisely 11:57 Cadian Standard, the power grid exploded, igniting volcanic fury across the planet. The crust cracked, molten lava poured forth, and plasma storms raged, turning the world into a burning wasteland visible from space. St. Josephine's Hope was lost, reduced to debris and ruin. None of Strike Force Herald returned. Their fate remains unknown. Our fleets scour the wreckage for survivors as the enemy retreats to regroup. The devastation echoes the ruinous power of legendary superweapons and reminds us that in war there are no bystanders, only survivors. This grim sacrifice may have bought us a crucial step toward survival in a conflict that has already claimed billions of lives. A new and mysterious force has entered the fray. Eldar ships, fast, sleek, and elusive, have been spotted by both Imperial Navy patrols and ground troops scattered across several sectors. At times, these enigmatic vessels aid our forces, pulling them out of deadly situations, but just as often, they strike without warning. Darker Eldar factions have been seen raiding smaller worlds, enslaving entire populations. Whispers tell of legendary Eldar warriors appearing at critical moments in battle, turning the tide before vanishing without a trace. Their true intentions remain a riddle. Sometimes they help humanity, sometimes they prey on it, leaving us wary and uncertain. Elsewhere, a chilling threat stirs beneath ancient tomb worlds. The Necron Terrace, a long-dormant race, has awakened in the Sentinel worlds. Despite opposing chaos, they are no allies to mankind. We've been instructed to avoid contact at all costs, even if it means letting common enemies prevail. The Necron Terrace are relentless, cold, and utterly alien, embodying death itself. Alongside them, Orcs gather strength in remote sectors, preparing a savage and calculated invasion, while strange alien infiltrations near Sabacchio Diablo hint at danger emerging from unexpected corners. The galaxy teeters on the edge of collapse, every faction readying for war. Recently, an enormous alien warship, flanked by smaller escorts, breached orbit near TX 2144, proof that threats and deception lurk everywhere. The battle for survival rages on, brutal and unyielding. Among the chaos, Erebus, the infamous Dark Apostle of the Wordbearers, has surfaced in the Malin's Reach system. More than just a warlord, he claims to be a prophet of dark powers, using manipulation and deceit as his weapons as much as bloodshed. Erebus played a dangerous game with our allies, the Ultramarines Honor Company, tricking them into launching an assault on Phaecia, a methane-shrouded planet. They hoped to trap him in its shadowy forests, but instead stumbled into a trap of their own. Erebus was nowhere near, and the Ultramarines faced an Eldar force guarding a mysterious war portal. Captain Echion wisely held his troops back, giving the Eldar a chance to withdraw, but trust was shattered when the Eldar suddenly turned on them with savage ferocity. The clash in those dark, scorched woods was merciless, with death stalking silently on both sides. With heavy casualties mounting, Echion ordered a retreat to regroup for a final push, only to find the Eldar vanished and their portal sealed tight. Bitter and bloodied, he swore never to trust those shadowy allies again. But Erebus' true cruelty was yet to come. While his enemies bled each other, he unleashed a 3-day storm of warp energy over Malin's Reach's main world. The violet storms brought madness, visions so horrific they drove many insane, some to suicide, others into violent frenzy. The darkness that Erebus commands is more than physical. It invades the mind, breaking souls before bodies fall. On the third night, Erebus forces emerged from the warp, landing near the capital's Ministorum district. The defenders, broken by relentless psychic assault, offered little resistance before being overwhelmed. The Wordbearers desecrated Ruskin Cathedral in unspeakable ways, acts so dark they remain classified even now. How Erebus managed such a devastating strike is still unknown, but the damage was severe, and the nightmare far from over. The traitors summoned monstrous warp entities within the cathedral ruins before retreating to their ships, leaving our forces to battle the chaos for days. It wasn't until Captain Echion's fleet arrived in orbit and unleashed a merciless bombardment that the beasts were finally driven back. The toll was horrendous. Countless soldiers and much of the city were lost, but Echion believed the sacrifice necessary to protect the Emperor's realm from the servants of darkness. Later, Inquisitor Gordian summoned me, arriving with his apprentice Ferdinand Kiras. They revealed a transcript from a remote psychic scrying session, an eerie glimpse into a shadow war of minds. The document described a young psychic prodigy under Kiras, attempting to uncover secrets held by Ahriman, a sorcerer allied with the Despoiler. To our horror, Ahriman had infiltrated the prodigy's mind through forbidden sorcery and murdered him from within. Realizing the gravity of the threat, Kiras informed Gordian, who disclosed a secret known to few. Inquisitor Civic, trusted by the Eldar, holds access to their mysterious webway, a hidden realm that enables rapid travel across the stars. Deep within this realm lies the Black Library, an ancient vault containing the universe's darkest, most powerful knowledge. Civic is among the rare few humans permitted to study its secrets in the fight against the great enemy. Ahriman's ambition is terrifying. He seeks the Black Library's power to control the chaotic forces and ascend to godhood. Through Civic's connection to the webway, he hopes to unlock these forbidden secrets and spread his influence. Though I am but one man, I command the Emperor's armies and will do everything in my power to assist the Inquisition in stopping this threat before it spirals out of control. Inquisitor Lord Gordian did not simply issue orders. He sought my aid willingly, and I intend to answer the call. He summoned the 34th Gudronite Rifles, which I gladly dispatched. But it's clear this fight demands pulling troops from the front lines to back Gordian's relentless hunt for Ahriman. Many will perish in this shadow war, their sacrifice unknown beyond these walls. But the weight of command is mine to bear, and I will see it through. With Eldar raids growing more frequent, command resolved to confront the Kabbalite Eldar, the darker, more reckless kin of the craft world Eldar. Though the Eldar as a whole command respect, this faction's unpredictable violence forced our hand. The Dark Angels stepped forward, joining with several successor chapters under Task Force Shadow Guard. Hidden deep in the Cryan range on Exvucan 7, they waited in silence, engines powered down, ready to ambush. When the Eldar appeared through their twisted portals to raid mining settlements, Shadow Guard struck first. The initial wave of raiders was crushed before they could mount a proper defense. Riding the momentum, the force shattered a second enemy group and pressed forward to the Eldar's portal, their only way out. Despite desperate attempts, the Eldar's assaults were disorganized and easily repelled. This decisive victory aims to leave a lasting wound on these dangerous foes. The battle with the Kabbalite Eldar continues, though it remains a distraction from the larger invasion. Recently, the Relactors chapter took matters into their own hands, attacking Eldar raiders on Xerxia without council approval. These raiders, involved in slave raids, paid dearly for crossing paths with the Relactors, proving that even unsanctioned actions can further the Imperium's cause. Xerxia stands as a fortress carved in steel and fire, where the Relactors unleashed a savage assault witnessed by many. The chapter tore through 3 entire cabals with ruthless precision, hunting every enemy without a shred of mercy. Their leaders brandished weapons of dreadful power, swords that blaze with purifying flames and axes that leech life, leaving only lifeless shells behind. Draped in banners crackling with sacred energy, the Relactors inspire terror wherever they march. Attempts to contact their commander, Articus Bardane, were met only with silence. After their brutal campaign on Xerxia, the Relactors appeared in Cadia, but when ordered by Grimner to reinforce the planet, Bardane refused outright. His fleet vanished from the system, rumored to be heading toward Framus. Furious at their defiance, Grimner severed all communication and dispatched his elite scouts to track them down and uncover their hidden purpose. These hardened warriors departed hours ago under a veil of secrecy. Their motivations remain a mystery, but their ferocity is undeniable, and their fight aids our cause. Meanwhile, the dark sorcerer Rumen and his 1,000 sons wreak havoc deep within the twisting corridors of the webway. Their rampage tears colossal rifts that render entire sections unusable, with Eldar strike teams vanishing into limbo or worse, swallowed by the chaotic warp. I have pinpointed Aruman's breach near the Void Worlds, and am preparing to follow. I've requested 3 regiments be sent to Audinus, and 1 to Set Van to launch diversionary strikes. Once confirmed, I will make my move. The Imperial Navy, long battered by relentless chaos fleets, has finally been bolstered by a colossal force from Cipramundi, the largest since the Gothic War centuries ago. This massive fleet now stands ready at Belli's Corona, split into battle groups focusing on critical sectors. The vast space surrounding the Eye of Terra demands precise, overwhelming power if we are to reverse the tide. If the Navy can seize control, it will sever the enemy's supply lines. While Orc mercenaries and Eldar raiders complicate the battlefield, the Imperium's iron grip tightens, and hope flickers brighter. Ancient defense lasers on Demio's binary, coupled with unyielding orbital strikes on Laurentix and Sedvin, have repeatedly thwarted Chaos forces, halting their advances. Admiral Corrin's tactical brilliance has turned the tide more than once, defeating far larger enemy fleets and paving the way for reinforcements to reach the fortress worlds. Fresh troops have pierced the Chaos blockade in the Skella sector, and the full might of Battlefleet Gothic now pounds the Belli's Corona system. Infernal mines litter the war zone, claiming ships and men alike, but the fleet presses on, driven by vengeance for past defeats. If the Navy can hold long enough, ground forces may finally break through. Everything hangs on this counterstrike. Failure could cripple Battlefleet Obscurus and force desperate redeployments just to slow the invading horde. Curiously, the once active Eldar craft worlds have vanished without a trace, their ships no longer attacking friend or foe. Teams of seers and strategists tirelessly track their movements, but the Eldar's mastery of concealment makes them ghostly and elusive. Meanwhile, Orc warbands rampage through the Skara sector, hitting Leith 11 and Mordax Prime hard. Experts warn these greenskins exploit the chaos sown by the Despoiler, striking opportunistically rather than forming true alliances. The loss of Mordax Prime, a crucial Forge world, would be devastating, not just for its war production, but for the horrors the orcs could unleash if they seize its factories. Despite a massive defense involving 15 guard armies and 5 Mechanicus legions, the orc tide only swells. Plans are underway to dispatch an additional 35 to 40 regiments from reserves, aiming to deliver a decisive counterblow. The moment to strike back has come at last. My commanders and I are ready to hit the invaders with a force so fierce it will drive them screaming back into the void they crawled from. I've devised a series of clever decoys to mislead the enemy, pulling their fleets deep into the Desamara Gulf, where their supply lines will stretch thin and falter. Hidden beneath the raging celestial storms of Hypro's Vale, I plan to unleash the largest fleet assembly seen in centuries, crushing them with overwhelming power. They might hesitate to destroy their own kind, almost. Signed, Quarren, Gathalimer, Demio's Binary. Recent reports shed light on the mystery of the missing Eldar fleets. A scout ship caught sight of their presence near system XT9030-4/G, a distant sector about 30 light-years northeast of Belly's Corona. There, a colossal Eldar vessel seized a target before disappearing without a trace. This sudden action explains their shift in priorities. The forces of the Despoiler have taken control of a Blackstone fortress, an ancient weapon of terrifying might, rivaling even the dreaded Planet Killer in these parts. If the usually aloof Eldar are throwing everything into stopping this, the threat must be beyond catastrophic. The situation in the Cadian sector worsens by the day. The Lord Castellan has ordered reinforcements from the Skelas sector to bolster defenses here. Skelas itself remains secure under Lord Marshal Attica and the Astartes, but enemy fleets have blockaded the system, trapping our forces inside. To break the siege, we launched a two-pronged strike: a surface assault on Varmard to divert the blockade fleet's attention, and a ground attack designed to force enemy ships into ferrying troops, complicating their defense. The plan worked better than anyone expected. Our attack shattered a massive chaos ritual led by Countess performing on Varmard, catching cultists off guard and slaughtering them with minimal losses. Enemy reinforcements flooded the planet, forcing Attica to lead 40% of his troops through the blockade to safety. Though costly, enough transports slipped through for the mission to count as a success, pulling enemy ships away from the front. But 3 days later, overwhelming reinforcements crushed Varmard's defenders. Their sacrifice allowed Attica's forces to reach Cadia, though the true price will never be recorded. Interrupting that ritual may have unleashed horrors we can barely imagine. Warp storms have intensified recently, especially near sectors connected to Germanicus and Hippocrene. Given the enemy's reliance on dark sorcery, this spike is no accident and threatens to derail our efforts. These storms wreak havoc on astropathic communications, turning brief delays into weeks and sometimes delivering messages from the future. Though many such transmissions are likely enemy traps meant to confuse. As a precaution, all uncertain messages have been sealed off by auto-mail agents to prevent further chaos. These raging warp storms don't just scramble communications, they endanger every ship caught within. Vessels trapped in these storms face terrors beyond imagining. At best, crews endure relentless psychic nightmares that break their minds, leaving soldiers useless once they land. At worst, entire ships vanish for years or are lost forever. As a senior officer, tracking the war amid this chaos feels nearly impossible. Without reliable intel, assessing the conflict's true shape is a nightmare. Coordinating fleets and armies across vast space is difficult enough in peace, but now it feels like commanding ghosts. Thankfully, our ground commanders are skilled and act independently, a necessity in these chaotic times. Still, with our enemies so cunning and organized, only grand-scale coordination can hope to hold our line. One of my key duties is to analyze the battlefield and relay crucial intelligence. Recently, I put together a detailed report on the Defiler, a monstrous war engine that has haunted us for generations, but only now has begun to appear in alarming numbers. As the invasion spreads death and chaos, these terrifying machines march alongside every traitor force and their mutant followers. The Defiler is a towering nightmare on 4 piston-driven legs, its frame armored with jagged metal plates. From its front extend two massive clawed arms, capable of ripping apart armored vehicles or crushing soldiers like brittle toys. Atop its frame sits a turret bearing a huge bore cannon shaped like a snarling beast, flanked by weapons that shift to suit the battle. Its body is adorned with spikes, chains, and blasphemous markings no loyal warrior dares to gaze upon. What makes it truly horrifying is that it's more than mere metal and machinery. Reports suggest it's possessed by a dark, corrupted spirit, a force warped beyond mortal understanding. Witnesses speak of the Defiler as a frenzied monster, driven by an insatiable bloodlust, attacking relentlessly as if feeding on the screams of the dying. Few live to tell the tale after facing one, yet we must discover how to stand against it. In my research, I reached out to Magus Decima, a specialist in machine spirits and forbidden lore. Through secure channels, he shared critical knowledge meant to arm our forces against this living terror. The Magus confirmed what many feared. The Defiler absorbs blows that would fell even the mightiest tanks. Though he didn't reveal the reason, he provided intelligence on several vulnerable points that, if struck precisely, might bring the beast down. After his third message, he vanished without a word, likely called away by urgent matters. Weeks later, Inquisitor Rothenberg arrived, forbidding any further discussion on the Defiler. I have no choice but to comply. One night, as I stood atop the walls of Casaeon, the sky was swallowed by a monstrous, glowing storm. The air was filled with anguished cries, thousands of restless souls wailing in despair. Racing to the command center, I was met with a flood of frantic reports. Our enemy had unleashed a fresh horror. Erebus, a blasphemous apostle of darkness, had summoned forbidden magics to erect grotesque cathedrals on the sacred world of Imperium. These abominable structures were built over the sacrifice of 1 million innocent lives in a grim, blood-soaked ritual. The sheer evil of it defies description. Yet the bloodshed was only part of the terror. These dark rites spawned devastating warp storms that now rage unchecked, severing supply lines and turning the ominous eye above into a symbol of doom. Rear Admiral Falkenberg reported the loss of the Saffrican Lady, a ship swallowed whole by a savage warp surge while guarding our fleet. The storm seemed alive, dragging the vessel into the void. His last transmissions, filled with terror and despair, haunt me still. Harsh stellar conditions forced us to pull back beyond the St. Phonos corridor, waiting in tense silence for new orders. The true scale of Erebus's dark plan is becoming impossible to ignore. His warp sorcery is designed to trap us, cutting off warp travel and choking off vital reinforcements and supplies. Somehow, we still cling to contact through fragile astropathic relays, but moving troops and materials has turned into an exhausting nightmare. The battle rages on, but the enemy's shadow stretches longer with every passing day. For a time, we were completely isolated. Warp storms crushed our astropaths, plunging us into a deafening void with no news from beyond. Even those without psychic gifts felt the crushing weight of silence pressing in from all sides. Creed paced the command center, barely able to contain his anger, while Kel's steady voice offered little comfort. To break the darkness, I ordered Peter Gorsovnik to lead a mass for the staff. It worked. The light of the Emperor pushed back despair, and even Creed's stormy mood softened. Slowly, reports began to filter through, then flooded in from every front. One chilling message came from a major stationed on Tabor, who recounted the final hours of his garrison with grim detail. According to him, the infamous butcher known as the Betrayer had descended upon the planet, leaving devastation in his wake. Still, against all odds, our forces on Tabor and throughout the Agrippina sector rallied and pressed forward. If we can keep the Betrayer's bloodlust contained, there's hope the line will hold. Meanwhile, the storms show no mercy, growing stronger with each day. Entire worlds, armies, and fleets have fallen silent, their fates unknown. We cling to broken, distorted astropathic messages for any news at all. It's not fear of defeat that weighs on us. We are Cadia's defenders, and surrender is a word we reject, but the helplessness of capable commanders stymied by chaos itself. Creed, ever practical, called for the Benedictors to bless our efforts. The command center transformed into a sacred space, with prayers and holy texts adorning every terminal. Cherubim drifted through incense-laden air, turning our war room into a place of faith as much as strategy. Among the whispered prayers and sacred symbols, the Emperor's strength feels more present, fueling our determination. Skelos remains a rare beacon of hope. Despite the storms, reliable astropathic messages confirm we still hold the line there. Creed has ordered 20 regiments from Skelos to stand ready for redeployment, prepared to strike wherever the chaos permits. But late last night, a new message broke through. The situation in Skelos is worsening. Defenders begged for urgent reinforcements, warning that only Thracian Primaris now stands between the orcs, the forces of chaos, and total collapse. Every day, more worlds slip beyond our grasp. The orcs seem especially obsessed with Mordax Prime, a Vital Forge world. They've renamed it Mordaka Prime and broadcast their threats loudly. If Mordax Prime weren't sacred to the Adeptus Mechanicus, I'd already be drafting orders for its destruction before its resources fall to the enemy. The Ordo Xenos might still intervene, and they have the authority, regardless of the Mechanicus's stance. For a time, we were completely isolated. Warp storms crushed our astropaths, plunging us into a deafening void with no news from beyond. Even those without psychic gifts felt the crushing weight of silence pressing in from all sides. Creed paced the command center, barely able to contain his anger, while Kel's steady voice offered little comfort. To break the darkness, I ordered Peter Gorsovnik to lead a mass for the staff. It worked. The light of the Emperor pushed back despair, and even Creed's stormy mood softened. Slowly at first, then like a flood, reports began arriving from every battlefield. One message, in particular, sent a chill through us all. A major stationed on Tabor recounted the nightmare final moments of his garrison. According to him, the dreaded butcher called the Betrayer had descended on the planet, leaving ruin and slaughter in his wake. Yet, despite this horror, our troops on Tabor and throughout the Agrippina sector rallied and pushed forward. If we can hold back this monster's savage fury, there might still be hope to keep the line intact. The storms outside rage with no mercy, each day slicing us further from contact. Entire worlds, armies, even whole fleets have fallen silent, swallowed by the void. We cling to broken, garbled astropathic transmissions, desperately piecing together whatever scraps of information drift through the chaos. It's not fear that weighs on us. Surrender is not in our nature, but the maddening frustration of skilled commanders rendered powerless by unseen forces. Creed, practical as ever, called for the Benedictors to bless our efforts. Our command center transformed into a sanctuary, with sacred texts and prayers adorning every terminal. Cherubim drifted through incense-filled air, turning strategy meetings into acts of devotion. In the quiet prayers and holy symbols, we found renewed strength. The Emperor's presence a steady beacon in the storm. Skelos stands out as a rare point of light amid the darkness. Despite interference from the warp storms, reliable astropathic messages confirm we still hold the line there. Creed has ordered 20 regiments on standby, ready to redeploy wherever the tides of war allow. But then, late last night, a crack in the silence, a single urgent transmission slipped through. Skelos is faltering. The defenders cry out for immediate reinforcements, warning that only Thracian Primaris remains between them and total collapse under the weight of orcs and chaos forces. Day by day, more worlds are slipping through our fingers. Most troubling is the orcs' obsession with Mordax Prime, a Vital Forge world. They've renamed it Mordaka Prime and broadcast their warlike intent across every frequency. If Mordax Prime weren't sacred ground to the Adeptus Mechanicus, I'd already be drafting orders to raise it rather than risk its resources fueling the enemy. The Ordo Xenos may yet intervene, and they hold the power to act, regardless of the Mechanicus's wishes. Being close to Cadian High Command gives us more frequent updates from Belly's Corona, though warp logic defies any straightforward sense of distance. Belly's is under crushing pressure. Even the Navy struggles to hold the line. Disease ravages Abicchio Diablo, and shadowy forces strike from deep space, bypassing known warp routes. We plan reinforcements as soon as conditions allow, with 30 battle groups ready to deploy at a moment's notice. In the Agrippina sector, communication is scarce and grim. Orin holds, but most other worlds teeter on the edge. The sector should have enough troops to defend itself, yet we're already drafting plans for major reinforcements. What exactly awaits them on those planets remains a mystery. All we can do is hope that what we send will be enough to turn the tide. Cadia has clawed back some of its lost ground. Our troops have pushed forward, reclaiming key territories taken in the early chaos of the invasion. Wherever communication still reaches, word of these victories spreads like wildfire, and the Office of Historical Revision has worked tirelessly to keep morale high. Every soldier is reminded that this war isn't just winnable, it must be won, and it will be won. The path ahead remains treacherous, but strategically and tactically, we stand stronger than we have in weeks. There's a fragile momentum building, a spark of hope. Then something completely unexpected breaks the tension. At 0425, an agitated astropath woke me urgently, demanding I follow him immediately. Bracing for disaster, I dressed quickly and headed to the command center. Instead of panic, I found stunned silence, eyes fixed on the master display. I looked once, then twice, hardly daring to believe what I saw. Battlefleet Solar had arrived, and much earlier than anyone anticipated. I roused the Lord Castellan at once. By morning, the United Command Council convened, and Admiral Wesson spoke with calm authority about the warp. He described it as deeply personal. Each navigator perceives it differently. Some see it as a fog to push through, others as a dark forest to cross. A rare few glimpse the warp's true nature, a violent, living storm. These elite navigators are capable of what should be impossible. When the relief fleet was ambushed in the warp, the lead navigator risked everything. He veered off the known route, diving into raw Imperium chaos, seeking a new path. Such gambles almost always end in death, but this time it worked. Battlefleet Solar didn't arrive late. They came early, intact and whole, guided by those few brave souls who stare into madness and still find their way home. Against all odds, every ship in the fleet executed a maneuver so rare it will be remembered in the annals of the navigator houses. They abandoned the known route and discovered a hidden shortcut through the Imperium, arriving far ahead of schedule. Many are calling it a miracle, crediting the Emperor's hand. The sheer scale of Battlefleet Solar's arrival stunned the Council. These ships normally remain anchored to protect the Sol system, an inviolable duty. Sending such a force here speaks volumes about the severity of the threat. Failure here would mean nothing stands between the enemy and Terra, a thought no one dares entertain. Once the shock faded, the Council rapidly assigned missions. Plans ranged from hunting the elusive Blackstone fortresses and the Planet Killer to securing vital intersector routes. The final call was clear. The fleet would seek out the Despoiler's Grand Armada, forcing a decisive battle while we hold the initiative. The commanders, hungry for revenge, seemed set on settling a score that's lingered since the siege of Terra 10 millennia past. To lift spirits, Creed ordered news of the fleet's arrival broadcast to all commands. The commissariat fully supported the move, and morale soared. In a rare show of generosity, the Lord Castellan even doubled the liquor rations for every Cadian regiment. I might have smiled at the gesture if not for the logistical nightmare now falling squarely on my team's shoulders. While the warp storms swirl violently around us, Creed has seized the moment to shift troops across the Cadian system with daring precision. This rapid redeployment moves millions, 42 million soldiers from 23 worlds, over just 3 weeks, aiming to catch the enemy off guard with a swift, coordinated strike. It's the boldest maneuver since the war began, and for the first time in months, High Command can feel a flicker of control returning. Yet the enemy remains relentless. Chaos forces hammer every front, but Kazuhan, a fortress world, endures the fiercest assaults. Night and day, mutant hordes batter the defenses, grotesque giants twisted by corruption, impervious to lost fire, alongside mangled abominations barely resembling humans. 15 regiments and a Titan Legion stand firm, but the true menace waits behind the mutants. The Black Legion, Abaddon's elite warriors, move with chilling patience. They let the mutant tide wear us down before striking with brutal precision, probing for weaknesses. Though we hold for now, each attack drains us, and the enemy's numbers seem endless. Our lines stay intact, but at a terrible cost. Every victory leaves us more fragile, every loss mourned deeply. To turn the tide, Creed shifted his command to Casa Home. His presence alone boosted morale, like fresh reinforcements arriving. Without hesitation, he led the Cadian 8th in a bold counterattack, striking the Black Legion before they could regroup. The assault was a thunderous success, our cheers echoing across the walls as Creed returned victorious. A moment I'll never forget. Then, the unbelievable happened. During a brutal push on the eastern wall, just as it seemed the Black Legion might break through, the 13th Company appeared out of nowhere. Their war cries rang primal and fierce, sending shockwaves through our ranks. The mutants scattered in panic, while the Black Legion struggled to halt the retreat, even firing on their own. But chaos erupted, and many were crushed beneath fleeing feet. The 13th then turned on the Legion itself, forcing even those feared warriors into retreat. The battle ended in minutes, and just as mysteriously, the 13th vanished without a trace. No one knows their allegiance. Inquisitor Asmeralis wasted no time, ordering all witnesses quarantined. Creed was livid, calling it an insult to our soldiers' bravery, but the Inquisitor stood firm, promising to release them once his investigation was complete. For now, the danger at Casa Home is contained, and Creed has returned to Cadia. The Inquisitor digs deeper while I watch the situation closely. On our journey back, grim news arrived. Chaos vessels had broken through the blockade and were heading for orbit. A cruiser squadron intercepted our convoy. Outgunned and overwhelmed, some feared the worst. But Creed silenced panic with a steady prayer. His faith in fate, duty, and the Emperor's light is unwavering, a beacon in the darkness. It felt like fate answered our prayers when, against all odds, our lives were spared. The lead Chaos cruiser, a monstrous Despoiler-class vessel, struck hard first. Our shields flickered and failed. Engines on the starboard side shattered. Most expected the end, but the story took a sharp turn. Creed stood unwavering on the command deck, locking eyes with the enemy as if challenging their wrath. When a nervous officer warned that the Chaos ship was charging its main guns, Creed only took a slow drag from his cigar and said nothing. Then, without warning, blasts of energy tore through the void, and one by one, the enemy shield shattered. Chaos was caught off guard by an attack from behind. Battle Group Rourke had arrived just in time, led by the fearless Duke Lustavon. They tore through the enemy fleet with ruthless precision, forcing the Chaos forces into a hasty retreat. We limped back to Cadia battered but alive, protected by Rourke's fleet. At high command, the Duke was hailed as a hero. Without his intervention, we would have lost much more than ships. We might have lost key leaders, including Creed himself. The debt we owe him can hardly be put into words. Back at headquarters, the endless reports kept piling up. Among the most troubling were accounts of strange skirmishes with the Eldar. Their elusive ships have been clashing with the dreaded Blackstone fortresses, yet they refuse any cooperation or intelligence sharing with us. After digging through records from the Gothic War, I ordered our forces to hunt down those fortresses without hesitation. If the Eldar see them as such a threat, we'd be fools to ignore the danger. At last, the brutal warp storms that have isolated the sector are starting to ease. With the storms shifting, both sides are moving large forces again. Creed has launched a massive counteroffensive, Operation Cryosos, and I've been tasked with overseeing the logistics. In the weeks ahead, millions of troops will be positioned for a decisive strike that could turn the tide. Success could stem the Chaos invasion. Failure might close the door forever. Trying to get a clear picture of our forces is nearly impossible now. Warp interference has shattered communications, and entire armies have disappeared from our records. Some may have been wiped out, others might have quietly filled gaps we never knew existed. The true scale of this conflict will remain a mystery for years, if not forever. For now, we fight with what we have, hoping it's enough. After relentless work, High Command has pulled together an army of unimaginable size. Thousands of regiments, mostly light infantry, but many far from full strength. A smaller number are armored and mechanized units, with elite forces like drop troops and infiltration specialists held back in reserve. Support teams, including engineers, logistics, and 30 super heavy artillery regiments, stand ready under direct command. bringing this massive force together, with units streaming in from all corners of the galaxy, was an enormous challenge. But my staff managed it in under 3 weeks, earning the full praise of the Lord Castellan. Now, millions stand ready and Operation Cryosos is underway. After 2 days of relentless bombardment, Creed gave the order to advance. Chaos forces responded exactly as we expected, gathering in overwhelming numbers until they formed a dark, shifting mass visible even from orbit. The sheer scale of the battle is almost beyond comprehension. A week into the fight, I've scarcely slept. Creed seems to go without rest altogether, moving constantly between the war room and the front lines. His presence alone revives shattered squads and pushes wavering soldiers forward. To many, he's already a legend in the making. Though he shrugs off the praise, whispers of his name echo through the ranks like a rallying cry. As Operation Cryosos dragged on, its momentum began to falter. Despite an unending tide of chaos reinforcements crashing against us, we achieved what many had written off as impossible. Few leaders in recent memory have wielded such decisive influence over the course of a war. But victory came at a terrible price. Of the 10 army groups that launched the offensive, only 7 still stand. Some, like Lord Commander Sidra's force, are mere echoes of their former might. Yet they press forward relentlessly, tanks grinding down traitors without hesitation. Our losses are countless, but the enemies have been even more devastating. Estimates suggest that over 3 million Chaos troops have been cut down by our fire and steel, a blow that will echo through their ranks for years. Early this morning, at 0915, Creed called a halt to Operation Cryosos. We had pushed as far as possible, and High Command declared the campaign a success. Without this strike, chaos might have swept over much of Cadia's surface. Though this may only be a brief respite in a much larger conflict, the triumph is real. Now, with the enemy staggered and reeling, we prepare to press our advantage once more. Fresh reinforcements pour in, dozens of Space Marine chapters answering the call from distant star systems. The Cadian Gate stands firm, strengthened by these legendary warriors. For the first time in months, a fragile hope stirs that the tide might finally turn. The arrival of the Space Marines breathed new life into the weary defenders. Veterans who had weathered countless assaults now stood shoulder to shoulder with their brothers in arms. Fueled by unbreakable determination, the Black Templars led the charge, diverting from their hunt of the Orc warlord Thraka to aid Thracian Primaris, a world on the brink of falling to chaos. With brutal efficiency, they shattered the enemy fleet, broke the blockade, and landed unopposed at Hive Demeter. Though hailed as saviors, they stayed only long enough to push the enemy back toward the Eye of Terror. Elsewhere, the Ultramarines Honor Company executed a daring orbital counterstrike as Abaddon's fleet threatened the Agri-World Lawtox. Their actions won precious time for evacuation before the planet's destruction. Afterward, the Honor Company moved to Cadia itself, striking deep behind enemy lines. In one bold raid, they disabled 3 troop transports drifting in space. A fourth, the Held of Grief, was obliterated when they detonated its core, wiping out 200,000 Chaos soldiers in a single stroke. The Iron Hands waged their own brutal war closer to home. Their forge world, Medusa, has been under siege since the Crusade began. The chapter poured nearly all its forces into defending it. The conflict reached a fever pitch when 10 Iron Hands fortress monasteries united to face an enormous armored assault led by the renegade Hradni XIII. What followed was a hellish clash of steel and fire across Medusa's toxic plains, one of the largest tank battles since ancient times. Chaos managed to break through on the 5th day, striking the flank of a mobile fortress at point-blank range. The Iron Hands launched a desperate counterstrike, assault squads leaping from battlements to plant melta charges directly on enemy armor. Casualties were heavy, but the fortress held firm, refusing to yield to the tide of darkness. The last of the traitors' armored forces crumbled under relentless pressure, forcing a chaotic retreat across the blood-soaked plains. Seizing the moment, the Iron Hands unleashed their devastating counterattack. Predator Annihilators tore through the battlefield, finishing what the assault squads had started with brutal efficiency. Though the ground was slick with oil and stained with blood, the defensive lines held firm. With the Space Marines now fully committed to the fight, there is cautious hope that the relentless advance of the enemy might finally be pushed back. The arrival of multiple Space Marine chapters has shifted the balance, but the traitor legions are far from idle. Fueled by ancient grudges, Chaos forces strike back hard on every front. The rear guard of Abaddon's invasion now clashes fiercely with the Imperium's elite warriors, Blood Angels, Black Templars, Imperial Fists, Howling Griffins, White Scars, and others, each battle raging with savage intensity. For the first time since the war began, the Imperium dares to imagine turning the tide. Elsewhere, Malin's reach has been declared a total loss. Corrupted beyond repair, the planet was marked for destruction the moment Inquisitor Cortez arrived. Without hesitation, he ordered a devastating bombardment. Cyclonic torpedoes rained down like judgment from the heavens, reducing the world to ash within hours. Nothing alive remains, and nothing ever will. But not all dangers come from the enemy. A bitter rivalry between the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels has sown chaos in the Sentinel worlds. Though fighting on the same battlefield, these two chapters refuse to cooperate, leaving Imperial commanders stranded at critical moments. The stalemate ended abruptly when both withdrew. The Dark Angels hunting shadowy fugitives, the Space Wolves chasing an ancient relic tied to their pre-march on Nemesis Tessera. These actions may ripple far beyond the immediate war zone. The Dark Angel's target is linked to a mysterious figure known only as the Voice of the Emperor. Operating from Lilithur, this insurgent has become the face of a vast rebellion, his heretical words spreading like wildfire across the sector. Millions have already pledged to his cause. Repeated strikes by the Dark Angels to capture this voice have been thwarted by simultaneous attacks on their homeworld. Each time they arrive, they find nothing but empty hideouts, desecrated shrines, and mocking messages. The Voice's dark teachings touch on the Legion's darkest secrets, stirring deep-rooted rage and old wounds. Though some dismiss him as a mere distraction, his influence grows with every broadcast. The war now rages on far more fronts than anyone first imagined. The Voice continues to flood communications with cryptic messages, invoking forbidden history that strikes at the heart of the Dark Angel's darkest sins. These words have ignited fierce violence among the unforgiven, who seek to silence him at all costs. Whispers persist that the Voice may hold some hidden truth, a deeper purpose involving the Dark Angels and their successors. Whatever his intent, one thing is certain: their relentless hunt will not cease until the Voice is silenced forever. In the chaos of war, Logan Grimner was chosen by his fellow Space Marine commanders to lead the Adeptus Astartes, defending the Cadian Gate. His legendary status as the Wolf Lord made him the obvious choice, though some chapters like the Dark Angels and Relictors resisted his authority, pursuing their own goals instead. Despite this, Grimner succeeded in rallying most of the forces, focusing their strength on crucial fronts like Cadia, Bellis Corona, and Agrippina. Fresh troops flowing in from Sector Oculus have fueled a bold counterattack, and if the long-standing tensions between the Space Wolves and Dark Angels can be set aside, the tide might still be turned. Far beyond the battle lines, a mysterious and fractured craft world appeared from the void within the Eye of Terror, bringing with it strange Eldar warriors, bearing the colors of a forgotten realm. Their assault against chaos has been swift and brutal, an unexpected intervention that has caught the eye of Imperial Inquisitors. Inquisitor Remus calls it a miraculous event, born from the dangerous visions of Eldar seers. Their true motives remain unclear, but their presence has changed the stakes. Meanwhile, dark rituals performed weeks ago by the traitor Erebus unleashed disaster on an unimaginable scale. 1 million souls were sacrificed, ripping open the very fabric of reality. Warp storms now rage uncontrollably, isolating entire systems and strangling supply lines. Only a handful of worlds, Cadia, Agrippina, Bellis Corona, Scaris, and Chinchair, remain accessible, becoming the final bastions before the storms consume everything. The 13th Black Crusade has reached its endgame. Reinforcements from distant fronts have either been pulled back or lost in the chaos. The scale of the conflict is overwhelming. Thousands of regiments, countless Space Marines, and towering Titans stand alongside ragtag militias. Against them, the enemies throw everything they've got: corrupted legions, rogue guardsmen, mutants, cultists, and horrors beyond imagining. Millions have died, and preachers cry out for faith, sacrifice, and vengeance. This isn't just a campaign, it's the reckoning, and only one side will survive the inferno of Cadia. The skies above the battlefields burn with streaks of fiery devastation as orbital bombardments tear into the surface. The ground shakes under the thunderous steps of titans, while fighter squadrons scream across a horizon engulfed in flames. The final days of the war crash down like a dying star. Lord Castellan Creed has made his choice. There can be no retreat, no hesitation. To fall now would doom all humanity. This war must be fought to its bitter conclusion. In a rare, fragile truce, the Space Wolves and Dark Angels have set aside their ancient grudge. Azrael and Logan Grimner now fight as uneasy allies, their chapters united by a temporary pact forged in desperation. The full details of this alliance are shrouded in mystery, but whispers speak of a powerful, unknown figure who arrived at high command just before the warp storms cut off all contact with the Imperium beyond. I saw the power of this uneasy alliance with my own eyes. During a sudden enemy breach at Khazar Tyrok, our command center was nearly lost. The defenders fought with everything they had, but the mutants tore through them like wild beasts. Surrounded and overwhelmed, we braced for the worst. Then, out of nowhere, the Space Wolves and Dark Angels struck from behind. Their assault was fierce and brutal, a lightning strike that shattered the enemy lines. Even in the chaos, their rivalry sparked fierce competition, each pushing the other to fight harder. Yet once the last foe fell, old grudges flared up again, reminding us that true unity remains elusive. Meanwhile, all hope of stopping the devastating weapon before it hit was dashed. It appeared suddenly above Macaria and unleashed destruction like a cataclysm. The planet was obliterated, millions of innocent lives lost in an instant. The shock rippled through high command, turning early hope into cold dread. What started as a battle to repel the enemy now feels like a desperate fight to avoid total annihilation. Still, Cadia stands firm. The enemy hesitates to destroy it outright, perhaps because the ancient pylons scattered across the world hold secrets beyond our understanding. So we hold our ground. No matter what comes, this world will not fall without a fierce struggle. In a somber speech to his officers, Creed laid out the brutal truth. Few of us might survive to see this war's end, but we will face it side by side, proud and unyielding. He honored their faith and sacrifice, reminding us that command means carrying the burden of sending men to their deaths. Failure here would mean more than defeat. It would open the gates to humanity's ruin. With a steady voice, he told us to hide our fear, for it proves we are alive. As long as we live, the enemies will tremble. Die well, warriors of Cadia, die well. Our defenses crumble piece by piece. The Viklas and Caddis lines buckle under endless waves of mutants, traitors, and cultists flooding the moors. Creed fights a relentless mobile defense, racing regiments to plug gaps, but numbers overwhelm. We fall back toward Khazur Partix, losing ground with every step. In these final hours, I've faced more combat than ever before. Though a staff officer, I stood on the walls of Casa Gahir beside the Cadian ape. From the battlements, I watched a massive traitor Titan Legion advance beneath the sky ablaze with orbital fire. Swarms of mutants threw themselves at the towering war machines, offering their lives as fuel for destruction. The battlefield roared with the fanatics' maddening chants. I almost wept for Cadia's fate, but then I turned and saw the 8th lined up on the parade ground. Their faces shone with courage and honor. They are rightly called the Lord Castellan's own. Creed spoke to them, preparing for a desperate fight back to Casa Partix. In their eyes was the grim acceptance of death, met with pride, never fear. That night the enemy attacked, their screams piercing sanity, but never breaking resolve. Artillery thundered against our walls, but the 8th held firm. When the first wave surged forward, a wall of lost fire tore through thousands. My lost gun ran dry in moments, just as Creed ordered half the companies to stand down and retreat. The rear guard was forming, ready to make their last stand. I returned to my post atop the ramparts, methodically reloading my weapon when Jaren Kell, Creed's color sergeant, tapped my shoulder, and motioned toward the waiting chimera. Creed lingered briefly on the ramp, his eyes locking with mine in a silent nod before we sped across the moors. The last sight of Kazagahir was its central keep engulfed in flames, a cruel reminder of the ground we had lost. About 3,000 men held the line, buying time for the ATH's retreat, but something went horribly wrong. They were encircled, overwhelmed, and cut down. News arrived a day later, chilling and grim. The captured were subjected to ritualistic disembowelment just beyond our defenses on the Vickley's line. We were powerless to intervene, and the weight of that failure crushed morale. Commissars struggled to keep despair at bay as defeat seeped into every corner of the ranks. After Kazagahir fell, Creed delivered a sharp warning. This was the most crucial battle of their lives. The enemy had returned with a vengeance, fiercer and more relentless than ever. Only those standing now could prevent utter ruin. Anyone unwilling to meet their duty was told to step aside. The Emperor watches over us, but calamity kept striking. A massive blackstone fortress appeared near St. Josephine's Hope, heading directly for Cadia. Escape was impossible. The defenders had to face their doom head-on. Then, unexpectedly, Eldred Ulfren, an Eldar leader, reached out with a plan to destroy the fortress. Creed met him on the plains, surrounded by a small cadre of psychers, their only shield against Eldar sorcery. Eldred's strange, unsettling presence carried a grim message. Destroying the fortress would require sacrificing every ship in the Cadian system. Distrust ran deep, but Creed accepted the harsh deal. Words had run dry. Stand and fight, or fall and die. The council resented relying on such an alien ally, but Eldred's warning left no alternatives. Now, as I stand on the battered ramparts of Casa Partix, the scarred land stretches endlessly before us. My role as a staff officer is over. I am one soldier among millions, watching the fleet prepare for one last desperate gamble. Their mission is to buy time. Time for the Eldar to infiltrate the fortress and disable it from within. Our fate hangs by a thread. If they succeed, we gain one more day. If they fail, this world will be swept clean by the chaotic storm the fortress will unleash. This was the enemy's plan all along. Everything has been leading to this moment. Countless warriors stand ready at the gates of Casa Partix, their names echoing the fallen heroes carved in stone. Inside the fortress, 23 regiments brace to defend their honor and write their legacy in blood. Outside, more than 200 regiments hold their ground, banners raised and prayers whispered. Reinforcements have come from distant, barely known worlds, all united by sacrifice and a shared cause. Among us are fierce warriors from elite chapters whose names inspire awe, alongside fearless sisters, inquisitors with their armies, towering war machines, and devoted confessors urging us to endure. This is a war of faith against corruption, purity clashing with heresy. Though death may claim us, we carry the Emperor's spirit in our hearts, believing our sacrifice will grant eternal honor. But the enemy's numbers dwarf ours. From the fortress walls, I see no patch of ground left untouched by friend or foe. Every twisted abomination from the Eye of Terror has gathered here. Yet this battle is but one echo of war raging across countless fronts. The battle's edge was sharp and cold as we steeled ourselves for what lay ahead. Word came through that the fight above us raged on fiercely. Our fleet locked alongside the Eldars in a desperate dance of fire and steel. The price was enormous, yet this war demanded nothing less than total sacrifice. A colossal inferno tore across the skies, crashing down with blistering heat upon our foes. Their agonized screams pierced the air as the blazing storm surged closer, closing in on Khazar with terrifying speed. We braced ourselves. Within the hour, the flames would consume the fortress, and we feared this was the final chapter. Khazar Partix had been lost. Its once proud walls lay shattered, a molten graveyard scattered with the fallen remains of 10,000 brave souls. We fell back to the shores of the Katakati Sea, determined to make a last, desperate stand at Khazar Jelen. The fortress might be gone, but the fight was far from over. Above us, the Blackstone Fortress was halted, but only after it had reduced the castle below to rubble. Admiral Corrin's fleet paid a terrible toll, sacrificing itself to grant the Eldar Farser Ulfrin's ship a chance to strike deep into enemy lines. Ulfrin vanished after boarding the fortress, swallowed by the shadows. Then, as if from nowhere, cold and merciless Necron ships appeared, attacking both Chaos and the Blackstone forces alike. The battlefield erupted into chaos, and the fortress slipped from our grasp forever. Lieutenant Fortuna, one of our psychers, glimpsed a haunting vision of Ulfrin trapped within a glowing crystal, his silent scream echoing through the warp's endless night. Such mysteries will haunt us long after this war ends. Though the fortress and its terrible power have disappeared, the enemy's tide shows no sign of breaking. With Casa Pardix lost, our command shattered and scattered, we fled toward Casa Jylan, trying to regroup. The retreat was merciless. Thousands fell to buy time for the survivors. The fortress's deadly beam had once kept the enemy at bay, but when it faded, the foes surged forward with savage cruelty. I fought alongside the Cadian Eight, Creed leading us time and again as we stood firm against the endless waves of mutants, traitors, and heretics. Though years have passed since I first tasted battle, the fight for our world is burned into my soul. Every foe I cut down is a vow. I will fight as long as I breathe. Now, I stand on the windswept shores of the Kajikati Sea, smoke rising like a dark storm behind me. Before me stretches the gray, churning water, and beyond it lies Casa Gallon, our last refuge, our final stand. With me are over 1 million survivors from a fallen fortress, but countless others lie behind, claimed and desecrated by the relentless enemy. Here, we must abandon much of our heavy gear, tanks, weapons, and machines left to rot or be destroyed rather than captured. What good is a weapon without the men to wield it? Yet I hesitate, reluctant to be the first to leave, watching as the steady tide of soldiers flows toward the transports, each unwilling to be last to fall. The evacuation unfolded on a massive scale, yet somehow the Munitorum officers kept everything running with impressive order. Despite the creeping despair among the troops, discipline held firm. The clergy stayed behind the longest, thousands of preachers offering solace amid the chaos, their chants rising defiantly above the relentless roar of enemy artillery. A small contingent of Space Marines, the subjugators, stood with us, so few now that their entire chapter teetered on the brink of extinction. They swore to hold the line until every last defender fell. Only a few thousand remained as the enemy tightened the noose. I volunteered to stay with the engineers, tasked with detonating the hidden explosives at the port, timing the destruction to strike just as the enemy arrived. Throughout this brutal campaign, I served as a staff officer with pride, but now I accepted my final duty, to make sure nothing of value slipped through enemy hands as we prepared to make our last stand. No longer behind maps and command screens, my place was here, at the front where the danger was immediate and deadly. Enemy fighters tore through the skies, diving through fierce flak from the 463rd Armored Hydra units, still holding their ground. Shells thundered from those monstrous war machines, horrors beyond imagining that would haunt me long after this battle ended. These living weapons were pure evil incarnate, a twisted mockery of everything we fought to protect. The enemy closed in steadily. Their hateful chants pounded in my mind, but I drowned them out with prayers to the Emperor. In the distance, banners of corruption fluttered alongside bloodthirsty cultists locked in savage combat, fanatics screaming blasphemies to dark gods. None of it shocked me anymore. It only hardened my resolve. Humanity must not fall to this madness. I was ready to die defending the Emperor's honor. The security forces at headquarters were under siege from the southeast. Flak tanks roared, mowing down waves of mutants and cultists like harvesters cutting grain, yet the enemy kept coming relentlessly. The crews stayed locked inside their vehicles, trapped but unyielding. I waited, finger tense over the detonator, ready to unleash hell the instant the enemy reached the central yards. No sooner. Now we were surrounded, the security unit wiped out, and no word from the engineers. I feared the worst. This was my last chance to trigger the explosion that would take thousands of heretics with it. Alone, I pressed the button. May the Emperor have mercy on us all. With that final act, the curtain fell. This was the end of the 13th Black Crusade.